Good morning, everybody. I like hanging out with Geraldine because she makes me feel tall. Okay? Geraldine was actually, when Mayor Bloomberg became mayor, I became the city's homeless commissioner, and Geraldine became the city's housing commissioner. And so we, from that first project that we worked on while I was in children's services, we really were able to use that relationship to really advance the conversation around affordable housing for neediest New Yorkers. And so it's been a great pleasure to have Geraldine as a friend and a colleague. And now in this new capacity is just tremendous. You know, Julie gave you a few, I'm going to try to just give you a little bit of my perspective on this. Julie gave you some of the big numbers that we think about and worry about. You know, a city, so it's the burden of the riches that we have, a city that is projected in the near future to go over 9 million, so growing quickly. Within that, a lot of you probably are familiar with this fact as well. The fastest growing population is our elderly, and so the elderly population within that same time period is expected to grow by close to 50%. And then within the dynamic of that city of over 8 million now, we have people living in a different way. A greater percentage, increasingly large percentage of individuals are living alone. And so looking for their own places. So more people and more often living alone. And, you know, and clearly the elderly population is part of what drives that. But the other pieces of what drive that, you know, young people come here. This is what's really driving. We're a city that, you know, brings creative young people here who you know, get their first job here and use all those creative talents that they've gathered to contribute to the growth and vitality of the city. And so they're looking for places to live. And we have immigrant population that continues to come here to find employment opportunities and educational opportunities. And so the dynamics of what our population looks like, not only is it growing, but it's really shifting. And smaller family sizes. It won't be too long before the number of people over 65 exceed the number of people 18. This will be the first, this is an international, you know, worldwide trend, the aging of the population. But we're at that brink now. For the first time in history, those over 65, just in the next couple of years, are going to exceed those who are under 18. And so we've got a different city on our hands as well. So I have a few different hats on. Of course, I was the homeless commissioner and remain very involved in the work of that agency. And I also work with Children's Services and our Department for the Aging. And so as I think about housing needs, which press so greatly on so many populations, I really think about it from all these different perspectives. I'm going to tell you about one conversation that actually got me to this point of saying, you know, why is it that we have the type of housing that we have? Because being, you know, of course, in government, you have to defend government, but there's part of being in this world that makes you an advocate too, right? And so that's really the challenge. How can you continue to advocate for positive social change while you're enforcing the rules at the same time? And so one of Geraldine's successors at HPD, Rafael Sesteros, and I were having a conversation, and we were looking at this enormous investment that the mayor is making in affordable housing in the city. 165,000 units of affordable housing being added during the mayor's tenure. We're about 3/4 of the way into that production. And looking at, like, who does who, affordable to who? The fact of the matter is, given the cost associated with building housing in the city, the affordability is really targeted to the sort of more in the median and a little bit below the median income. So this is not affordable to very low income people at all. The fact of the matter is the cost is so great that you need people of a certain income in order to make a contribution toward the cost so that you can make a big difference for them, but it's not really going to the lowest income individuals. And so, you know, so we struggled with the reality of that, and I felt sort of, well, I guess that's the reality, so what can we do? And as you know, so Raphael and I were down at the, here, let me point in the right direction, down at the South Street Seaport having lunch one day. And I said, well, what if we looked at it upside down? What if we said, what would it cost? How much could we spend on a unit to make it affordable to a very low-income person? And what are the things that drive the cost? And can we sort of take it apart from a different direction and think about, like, how big would it have to be? What would the regulations have to be? And it got us in this conversation of saying, well, you know, we're stuck to a large extent because we work within a lot of constraints, and then our mind just limits ourselves to those constraints. And so it, on the city side, got us talking about just this challenge of, do we need to really think about housing in a different way in the city? And so that, I think, is the parallel conversation, and you're going to hear a lot more about that from our panelists this afternoon from the city, where to us, this conversation that's going on sort of the creative design side, hopefully can be mirrored in a conversation going on in the city around, well, exactly what rules and regs and building standards and codes and mental limitations do we have as managers of the city processes that might be changed in order to help to envision a new future. And so part of this, I think, is really us trying to challenge ourselves to be as creative as possible. We're trying to drive that conversation, and I keep saying trying, not because I think that it's not a wholehearted effort and we won't get there, I think we will, but it's daunting, and there's just a huge challenges. You know, and the other honest part of this conversation is that we look the other way a lot on violations of some of those rules where we know we have an impossibility of enforcement. So, you know, people living in doubled-up housing, people living in illegal conversions in 1- and 2-family homes. And if we ever enforced that wholeheartedly, we would have mass homelessness in the city. We would have so many people homeless, we would have a true crisis. And so we're always managing that on the margins of ensuring safety as much as we can, and knowing that right now we haven't put ourselves in a position that we can honestly expect that we can live by the standards that we have. And so part of that is also, do we need to think differently? I can tell you, I've had quite a few of my own first-year out-of-school interns, and I know they're living with 5 or 6 other young students in violation of the city's rules that say no more, is it 3 unrelated adults? I forget what the exact standard is. I get a couple of nods. It's 2, it's 3, it's 4. You know, there's, young people that are renting in large part together. And then the flip side of that is we have older people that are living in large apartments, the empty nesters, and having them actually adopt a model of subletting rooms in their apartments is not available to them because they're not facilitated in that, and they're abiding by rules as well. So with all of this, this is a way of saying that I think that this conversation that you're having is incredibly welcome, because as the creative designers and the creative vision, you can help us to see how those, looking at those rules and changing them isn't a conversation about compromise and making things worse. In fact, it is a conversation that can help to really find imaginative, creative, beautiful ways of bringing this transformation in our thinking and ideally carrying those through to implementation so that we really do start now to make up for some of the changes that we should have been making in the past, and just as importantly, to get ready for this incredible growth that we have in our future. So thank you for all your incredible brilliance and for being partners in this, and we look forward tremendously not only to this discussion today, but maybe seeing in the near future if we can get some of these ideas onto paper, into laws, and into implementation. Thank you.